We think we know the top three of the 2026 NBA draft, but who else is there should the Jazz draft outside the top three? Find out next on Locked On Jazz.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Jazz. My name is Leif Thulin. I'm excited to be back with you, filling in for David Locke. This is my last week of this stint throughout August. Thanks for listening with me. As you guys know by now, a lifelong Jazz fan, credentialed NBA draft analyst, attendee of the 2023 and 2024 NBA Combines, Jazz broadcast assistant and statistician each of the past 4 seasons, and lover of college hoops. So I'll make sure you know what you need to know about your beloved Utah Jazz and incoming prospects. Thank you guys for making Locked On Jazz your first listen each and every day. Remember, Locked On Jazz is free and available on all platforms, including YouTube at Locked On Jazz, where the best way to help us grow is to comment anything below. And today's question is, which player other than AJ, Cam, or Darren would you like to draft if up to you? Say the Jazz are the 4th pick, those guys are gone. Who's your pick? Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season around the corner. Visit FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now. So today on the show, I'll go through the next 3. Maybe I'll give you some more. I'll give you 6 after the big 3 that could be factoring into where the Jazz select in the 2026 NBA draft. So let's dive right in. But before we really get into some basketball, I got to mention something else. First things first, I wanted to extend my condolences to the family of Caroline Klein and any loved ones who passed away last week. She was an important worker for the Utah Jazz organization, the hockey club, and she passed away due to a very rare cancer. And she wrote a beautiful sentiment with parting words to encourage everyone to be intentional with their lives. And she lived that way in her life until her last days, rather than remembering her for how she passed away, remember her for how she lived is this motto of it. But I wanted to say that to Jazz fans to check it out. And for those of you who know her well, I didn't know her well, but she was enormously respected and beloved within the Jazz organization. So I recommend reading her parting words and living like she did. So now let's move on to the NBA draft. 2026 NBA draft has some serious talent. And the top 3 in some order by everyone's opinion is AJ, Darren, and Cam. The Jazz have protected pick, meaning the Jazz need to get drafted within the top 8. And so our record will matter, as the furthest the Jazz can fall is 4 spots below the record you have in the standings. And therefore, I don't think the Jazz will really fall out of that range. I still think it's most likely the Jazz draft within the top 5. But maybe it'll be 3 through 6. So let's talk about those guys who factor into that equation. So rather than just name 3, I'll name the biggest names at each position, guard, wing, center, and go through who the Jazz could draft and break down their games. So most people have Nate Ament at number 4. I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, but Nate Ament I'll go through nonetheless. He's considered to have one of the highest upsides in the draft due to his combination of size, shooting ability, and ball handling skills. He's 6'10", 6'11", versatile forward with a high upside due to his ability to shoot, handle the ball, and create for other players. You just don't see that at that size, especially at the high school level. He's fluid with the ball in his hands, drives to the basket pretty well. I wouldn't say fantastically. Makes plays for teammates. That's the most tantalizing part for me, and shows flashes as creative, ball handler who can really get to the rim with that size. And that's what's interesting to me. He's got good vision. He moves really well. He is very, very thin, though, so his body needs work. But Tennessee, certainly a team that, prioritizes strength training and really helps their guys develop. So that shouldn't be too much of a concern. And speaking of a player that went to Tennessee, that built his body, and he was older, but Dalton Connect, his role was just to score the ball at Tennessee. Everyone else played defense. I wonder if that's Nate Ament's role, or will he be a more well-rounded player with the defensive intensity that Coach Barnes coaches with? I think his tools, just alone, the frame at 6'10", 6'11", length, skill with the ball, and shooting that seems to be real, is what makes scouts salivate. But he's proven a lot less than many of the others in the top of this class, including the top 3 and some of the guys to follow. So while he's a solid ball handler, he needs to expand and refine his skills as an offensive creator, particularly in navigating through congested paints and becoming more aggressive going to the rim, as he's slender. And I think he'll get bumped off his spot when he can't rely on athleticism at the same level. So my assessment really on him is his traits will get him taken in the top 7, top 8, but I don't see him as a lock for the top 4 as many prognosticators do, because I think there's some recency of his rise, and there's a reason that these other guys have been known commodities and thrive for years and years. Sometimes it works out well. I have a little bit of more skepticism about Nate Ament, but I can see the appeal. So the other wing that I'm going for, he's a bigger bodied wing, and I feel like he has the track record to put himself in this conversation, though I don't think he's ever really talked about as the 4th best player in the class, but he's been really, really good for a long time. That's Koa Peat. Fun fact about Koa Peat, he's a guy I've known about for a decade, maybe a little longer, because Koa Peat, his older brother, played on Stanford's football team, and I adore Stanford football, which is it's painful. I'm not even gonna lie. And then he was drafted in the first round by the Saints. So his brother Andrew Peat talked highly about his brother. I looked him up, and boy, was he really good at that age, and he became really, really good for a long time. I think Koa will likely be a higher pick than his brother, who is a top 15, top 20 pick, and he has all the high school accolades that you could ever ask for. Koa will be, excuse me, Koa will be attending Arizona. He's 6'8", 235 pounds. He's a forceful attacker, really gets downhill, can score both inside and outside. Although I will say his range, I think, is a little bit limited. I think Nate Ament's a far superior shooter, and that's just not debatable from what they look like shooting the ball. But he's effective in the mid-range, and he's really effective with his back to the basket, then facing up. He can take the bigger players off the dribble, and the smaller players he takes to the hole, and he's just strong, and he's fluid. And some guys just rely on their strength. Some guys rely on their speed. He's got a really effective way of using both of those, along with really sophisticated footwork and ability to get to his spots. He likes to score from 15, 18 feet and in, and he's a really good rebounder, crashes the boards, initiates offense, run and gun, can take it and dribble, moves really well, similar to Boozer in that sense, as he can put the ball on the deck and pass. One thing I really like about him that I don't think that many people know is he's tough as nails. He's tough as nails. He played it with a broken wrist in a state championship game, and it was his shooting hand. He played the game and had a double-double with just his left hand, and he didn't need to play that game. That's a 5-star right there, and he played the game. And he's been a known commodity for years and years as someone who is really good, and he's maybe gotten a bit overshadowed by the excellence of the big three. I think he's a really good ball handler. He's got a clean release. It's just not as pretty of a shot as Nate Ament. But so that's where the concerns lie. It's like, how good of a shooter is he when he's a more forceful driver and people are starting to catch up athletically and are just as strong, so he doesn't get to the rim as easily. But that's a real concern. That may tap into his upside, but he's a proven winner on the flip side. Should win again at Arizona at a fairly high level, and I think he can blend in on any team more easily than most. And some would question, this is an interesting part that I think is interesting, at least, is how much do you guys care for upside in the same sense of he's been the same size for a long time, whereas a lot of the other players are late bloomers. Nate Ament, a late bloomer. He's taller and he's growing into his body. So is he going to get better as he grows into his body? Perhaps. Koa Peat's been a 6'8", 235 guy for years. So maybe he's more fluid in his body frame, but that means there's less talent growing. Like, is there less intriguing upside than a guy like Nate Ament, than other guys? So I think that's the reason people are a little more sour on Koa Peat, but it's pretty hard to make an argument that he doesn't belong to be a top 10 pick based on the resume thus far. So let me know which wing you like the most of those two, or if there's another guy I haven't talked about. And we'll discuss some other talented prospects headlining the class who are seen as just outside the three. Next up, we're going to go talk about the big men who feature this class. All that and more coming away straight ahead on Locked On Jazz. August 26th is officially FanDuel's Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. So if you want to take a flyer on the MVP race, how do you feel about Joe Burrow? I think his prolific offensive stats got overshadowed by a terrible team last year. I think they get a little better, and his stats stay about the same, and he was a contender. Crown your champion in August, if that's your thing, if you want to put a future on the champs. I like the Chiefs just because I think Mahomes is the best player in the world, and I think the best quarterback ever. So I'm going to ride with him. Now, if you want to parlay your division winner, this is an interesting one. Do you want dark horses or favorites? But two I like are the Eagles to win the NFC East and the Texans to win the AFC South. So let me know if you want to ride with those ones. But visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets right now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. I also want to tell you about Murdoch's. They've been in Utah for over 80 years. It's the Murdoch Chevy family. The Chevy is just about as American as it gets. Their locations in Woods Cross and in Logan. The great lineup of SUVs and trucks are included and up to date on the latest inventory. You can go to the website, see the latest deals. They got the Colorado and the Silverado and the trucks selection, and then they've got the Tahoe, the Suburban, the Blazer, the Equinox, and the Trax, and the SUV. So whatever fills what you want, check it out. Talk to the fantastic people at Murdoch Chevy. They'll take great care of you. Mention you listen to Locked On Jazz, and that'll always help you as well. So tune in, listen to Locked On Jazz, go to Murdoch Chevy, and get yourself a fantastic deal on a truck or a SUV. All right, welcome back to Locked On Jazz. Leif Thulin with you here. In this segment, I'm going to talk about two bigs, and I think both of these guys can push to be top 5 picks. The first one, I would probably take 5th overall right now if it were up to me. His name's Jaden Quaintance. He's attending Kentucky this year after playing last year at ASU, where he was, and you may say, wait, why was he so good and didn't enter the draft in what was a good draft, but maybe not as good as the upcoming draft? Well, it's because he was too young to enter the draft. So he played college basketball at 17 years old. And he's a defensive terror, an absolute nightmare. I've seen him likened to the Tasmanian Devil on a Substack article that I really enjoyed. And I didn't think that was insane. So he's one of the best defenders that I've seen in college basketball, because there's stuff he does that's unteachable, and he was already super effective. But as he gets stronger and more confident in what he's doing, also on a better team this year, I think there's a legitimate world that this is the defensive player of the year in college basketball with offensive upside. And the last time that happened was Anthony Davis. I don't think he's Anthony Davis, but I'm just pointing that out. So what is he? He's about 6'9" with just crazy long arms. It's about 7'4". He's got really good vertical athleticism, a strong frame. He's got really good hands, both on the defensive side, and he catches the ball well on offense. And to me, I think he's the most gifted and I think most valuable player in the SEC, which again will be the best conference in America. So let me run that through for you. Alabama's got a ton of talent. Auburn's got a ton of talent. Florida just won the championship, got a ton of talent, and kept a lot of talent. Kentucky's always got great guys. He's the best of the bunch. And then Tennessee just has Nate Ament, who most people pick as 4th. I would take Jaden Quaintance right now. I want to say that I'm willing to change this should I be proven wrong. But I think Jaden Quaintance is the next best player in the country behind the big 3. So why do I feel that way? As an 18-year-old, he averaged 2.6 blocks per game and over a steal at ASU, and had multiple games with 4+ blocks. Like, some of his stat lines were gaudy. His freshman stats at ASU were fairly pedestrian if you look at him just like, oh, okay, that's 9 points, 8 boards. But he had nearly 3 blocks a game, 2.6 blocks, 1.1 steals over 24 games. And these are games where he was playing on a team that was talented but did not play well together. But just what he did defensively was eye-popping. And he's coming back from a knee injury that shortened his season. So that may make him put up less eye-popping stats, play fewer minutes, be slower to catch everyone's attention. But he's the real deal. He can handle the ball, gets where he wants, and he's not a good shooter, but he gets where he wants despite being a poor shooter. It's kind of an inconsistent, awkward form, but its potential to go downhill, play make, and be one of the best defenders in the NBA from day one will tempt scouts, certainly. He's got plenty of allure. I really think you'll marvel at his speed, coordination, footwork. The combination of speed, coordination, and footwork alone makes him a lottery pick to me, whether he plays offensive basketball whatsoever. But also, I actually think he'll be very good on offense because Mark Pope uses his bigs as offensive hubs. This is where watching copious amounts of college basketball comes in handy. The Celtics took this guy named Amari Williams in the second round of the draft, and I think he's going to be good in the NBA. But Mark Pope took him from Drexel, and he was big, long arms, and he was the hub of their offense. He threw a ton of back cuts and passed the ball, and they were an offensive engine. Kentucky could really score the basketball. They were a 3 seed, and they performed pretty well. But the one thing I'll tell you about Kentucky is they didn't have a guy like Jaden Quaintance. Amari Williams could throw passes. He could dunk the ball. Jaden Quaintance can have the ball, go downhill, and score. And then he can be an excellent passer, as well as a better defender than Amari Williams, who is a defensive player of the year in his conference prior to attending the SEC at Kentucky. Mark Pope, the years before that, had a guy named Ali Khalifa, who now attends Louisville, Mark Pope's rival, and he threw beautiful bounce passes, back cuts when BYU surprised everyone and made their initial surge up the Big 12 2 seasons ago. So I think his role at Kentucky makes him out to be a better offensive player than he even is already. And I think he's a far better offensive player than he demonstrated at Arizona State at 17 years old. I think Jaden Quaintance will thrive offensively and win the Defensive Player of the Year nationally. Like, that's a top 5 pick to me. The second big man I have on here, I have a hard time seeing going as high in the draft, but I rate him pretty highly because he has crazy traits and the dynamic ability that he possesses can exceed expectations in a draft, and that is Chris Cenac. He is 6'10", 6'11", 230 pounds with a 7'4" wingspan, and he's fresh out of high school, just looks the part. Like, you watch him play and you say, wow, that guy's active, that guy's long, he looks coordinated, and it's not just one thing or the other that is making scouts salivate. It's a lot of it together. He's the most heralded recruit Houston's seen in decades, probably since Hakeem, honestly, but he's a fantastic rim protector. He's got mobility and shooting touch of a modern big, and the rim protection and toughness that you're going to build at Houston is that means that if he can pass Kelvin Sampson's, you know what, like, you're going to get stronger, you're going to get tougher tests. I think he's got tremendous upside. Houston's really typically had strong, thick-bodied guys that tend to have long arms. Think of Juwan Roberts, think of Javier Francis, Reggie Chaney, rest in peace. Guys like that who are strong and physical, and his long arms then get rebounds. No, like, he's going to block shots out of the sky. And he'll pair with JoJo Tugler, who I think's the prime competition for Jaden Quaintance for Defensive Player of the Year. And they're going to be some of the most incredible defensive teams you've ever seen, Houston. And they're more dynamic in the front court than they've ever been. They've been shutting teams down for the entire decade that Kelvin Sampson's been there. So let's get to what he does well, aside from thinking about college hoops, which I love to do. What makes his other skills interesting is I think they'll actually get to be displayed, whereas a lot of Houston teams have been so veteran-laden that the smallest roles are given to freshmen. This team has some veterans, but I think he'll be able to play with the ball in his hands a little more. I think he's going to be able to move and switch a little bit, have the leeway to switch instead of playing drop coverage, and it'll make him more enticing as a defensive prospect. I think he'll block shots. He'll certainly rebound. He's going to switch. He's going to hedge the ball screen and slide his feet because they're going to have so much of a luxury with what they can do with their two bigs defensively. The other thing, aside from his defensive fluidity and his ability to go up and block shots, as I was astounded by how well he rebounds the ball. I watched the McDonald's clips for the practices. I watched him in the game, and he blocks everything. He rebounds everything out of the sky. And I think this is where the intrigue comes. He's got all those traits: rebound, block shots, dunks things, but he's got really good touch for such a good athlete. Many of those guys just rely on their athleticism, dunk everything. And I'm curious how good he can be on offense and how good of a shooter he can be, because I'm impressed by his short roll touch on floaters. I think he's got a reliable catch and shoot jump shot, even stepping out to 3-point range. And his face up, I wouldn't say you're going to see that much at Houston, but it's intriguing to me to see what he can do, because I think there's a lot of untapped offensive skill wrapped up in an uber athlete's defensive skill body. Like, an area of improvement's obvious for him too. He needs to add weight and improve his strength of his legs and body up against the rare post players, the Jokic's, the Embiid's of the world, and make himself stronger so he can handle elite level interior play that Houston is going to face in the Big 12, but also in the NBA when he's there. And Houston's the best school to go to for strength training. Those guys are beasts, absolute specimens. So the strength coach for he and Nate Ament will certainly be vital to, really honing out their bodies and making them the best prospect they can be. So I don't know if he'll get the chance to show it, but I do like his mechanics. I think his range is better than anticipated. I don't think he'll shoot a ton of them, but this is a guy who I think will show out in a combine setting and be like, oh, that guy can shoot a little bit. That guy's going to rebound everything in the sky. He's going to pass well, and he just needs to polish off his game. His balance, his footwork, they can all get better. I think his low post scoring is ahead of most people that athletic. His hustle game is admirable and will only get better playing at Houston. And he's still developing in terms of the decision making that you see in a basketball game. Like, he feels like he's got some untapped like knowledge of the game. You make him smarter about defense, he's going to become even better. And he, like I said, he is a specimen on the boards and on the glass, on the blocking shots and grabbing things off the glass. If his jump shot comes around, the Anthony Davis comps that you're going to float around just because he's long and he's got some good touch, they're not too insane. I don't think he'll be as good as Anthony Davis because that's really difficult to be. But that's the vein of player that he may be. It's the Evan Mobley. It's the Anthony Davis. It's a modern big who can switch on defense, block shots, and have an offensive skill set. That's what I'm anticipating. So I'm very excited to see he and Jaden Quaintance. I would take Quaintance ahead of Cenac right now, but these guys are certainly contenders to go in the top 10. So I like both those guys an awful lot. Coming up next on Locked On Jazz, I'm going to discuss two guards who factor into the who's next conversation after the big three of AJ, Cam, and Darren. Find out next on Locked On Jazz. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. So think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber, a service provider. If the first person didn't answer, did you wait? Probably not. You moved on. That's why you need an open phone. Open phone is the first and number one business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. Open phone lets me manage calls and text from a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. Open phone's offering our listeners at Locked On Jazz 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All righty, we're winding down on Locked On Jazz. I'm Leif Thulin. And the guards I'm excited about, but I think their range varies more than the other guys who I expect to be top 10, assuming health, because their role on their teams is going to be more prolific scoring type. So their efficiency could vary more than the other guys who I think play complementary roles and star in their role. So the two guards I will discuss are Mikel Brown Jr. and Tounde Yessoufou. Brown is the higher of the recruit of the two. He's a standout on Team USA U19, and many felt he deserved the MVP of the tournament over AJ DeMonsa, and I was among the many. I thought he was the better player throughout the tournament, and he averaged nearly 30 points per game in Florida at his high school, and he posted, let's see what it was, 29.3, 4.1 assists, 5.3 rebounds per game, shooting 45 from the field, 41 from 3, 90 from the line. Really good shooting splits, dynamic score. You saw it in the U19. He could step back and shoot from crazy distance and run an offense full of other stars. That second part's equally as important as his incredible shooting. With that said, let's talk about his shot. Deep range, consistent release point, and according to the Adidas circuit, which he played on, he shot 42% from three. That's really impressive in an AAU setting. And to me, though he played the point guard, I think he's more of a scorer than a passer. But if fans of the Jazz then say, oh, is he Keontae then because he's a better scorer than he is point guard, I think the difference is he's been playing point guard for years, and he's more able to use his speed to get into the paint, whereas Keontae George is a natural-born scorer who's used to stepping back and hitting jump shots. Brown can do all that and a little bit more. And he can get downhill and be maybe a more explosive athlete. So I also think what he does really impressively is he uses his shooting to create the defender's attention to then get closer, close the gap, and he blows by them. He's quick in that setting. And then he's so quick, sometimes people switch and he steps back and hits the three. Like, he's very good at playing to his strengths and punishes teams for overcorrecting their defense on him. He is very slender. I mean, this is going to be a recurring theme. He's not a huge guard anyway in terms of size, height-wise, I should say. So strength and finishing are certainly two things I would look for him to improve in college, and you want him to do well at when determining when he's going to score, when he's going to pass is the other thing I always look out for a guard. I'm very curious to see what he does at Louisville because they have a talented roster. How much does he shoot? How much does he distribute? Is he the star of the team? I think he will be. And there are other areas defensively to round out his game, but it's dynamic. His game is dynamic. He gets downhill, he scores, he knocks down deep threes, and I think Brown will be selected in the top 8. I just do. It's rare to see this level of shooting coupled with good speed and very well honed creation for others. I would say that's still something he would want to improve upon more than perhaps the other parts of his game, and that'll differentiate him. If he does that very well, he could crack the top 5. So speaking of how good he was, I dug out some quotes about him. Pat Kelsey, his coach at Louisville, he labeled him a generational talent, and he said he expects Brown to balance creative freedom with attention to detail, and he expects him to be an all-ACC performer. So the last guy that I'm going to tell you guys about is a guy named Tounde Yessoufou. And if you look at him, he looks just like Anthony Edwards. That's who he models his game after. Their frame is similar. Their faces are very similar. Their bodies are very similar. And you can mistake the two for one another. He's a consensus 5-star recruit. He committed to Baylor. He was ranked 14th nationally. And he broke the California high school scoring record. Let me reiterate that. He broke the California high school basketball scoring record. And there's been a lot of fantastic players there. He's 6'5", big, strong guard, huge shoulders, long arms, can palm the ball, go wherever he wants. He looks the part. And he makes things happen. He makes things happen with that athleticism. Doesn't just coast on it, makes things happen. To demonstrate that, he had 5 steals in the All-American game. And you know he can score with those numbers above of, once again, scoring 3,659 points in high school basketball in the state of California. The other thing is, when you talk about that level of athleticism, you may think, oh, he's raw. But he's more polished than you think, given his size, the imposing body, and you guess he just gets downhill. He does that very well, but the shooting's more polished than you'd think. Supporting that, there's this tidbit I found when doing some digging. Off the dribble in EYBL, which is the Nike circuit for AAU, grassroots basketball, he's 85th percentile off the dribble as a shooter. So he can knock the ball down. He can use his ability to get to the rim to stop on a dime and knock down jump shots at a high level. He gets downhill with absolute force, unadulterated aggression, frankly, and he finishes through contact very, very well. He's strong at the rim, and he's developing further his mid-range, and his perimeter game is coming along. Like, I really like his upside. He's going to be one of my favorite watches because I think he's going to have higher variance than a lot of these guys, which may or may not hurt him. But I'll get to my final thought on him in a moment. He gets downhill super, super easily, dynamic athletically. I would say he needs to polish his three-point shooting mechanics. If you were to nitpick, it doesn't look natural to him. It looks almost as if you taught a football player how to play basketball and he's thriving, but you had to nitpick one thing like, hey, man, you want to get better at this. This will really help you. That's the big thing for him. How well does he shoot off the catch and on movement? Because what he does is he's a rhythm guy. Between the legs, rock, jump shot. And it looks pretty good. It just looks a little bit less second nature than a guy like Brown, who I would quantify as a sniper, or I would qualify as a sniper. The other thing I'd look at for this is he's going to Baylor. Baylor, ever since the days of Jared Butler, former Jazz man, Baylor's had a lead guard that gets the ball and is let rock by Coach Drew. We had Keontae George, of course. The third pick of last year's draft was VJ Edgecombe. There was other guys. There have been seniors like James Akinjo, but there have been first-round picks, Jacoby Walter, to name a few, each and every year. Last year, VJ Edgecombe went number 3, didn't have that good of a college season. Tounde Yessoufou is bigger, similarly athletic, and I think he's more polished as a scorer. I think VJ was an athlete that was learning to score, and he, proved that based on his lack of efficiency early in the season. He got better. I think Tounde Yessoufou is going to be one of the better scorers, top scorers in the Big 12, and he's going to do that as a freshman, and he's going to play hard on defense. Like, he's going to be one of those guys you'll want on your team. He's known to compete, and I think he's going to help Baylor find its edge that it feel like they've lost since winning a championship. They haven't been good defensively. He'll have the ball early and often, and that's a nice pathway to help himself out. That said, if he shoots the team out of the game, and maybe it's not just him, but he has the ball in his hands a lot and he's inefficient, I think there's a world in which he controls his own destiny in the negative way too, based on how efficient he is. If he's efficient, he may propitiate himself up to the top 5. If he's inefficient, I think there's a way he falls down to the 10 through 15 range, whereas a lot of these other guys I feel like are safer to be picked 3 through 8 or 4 through 9, something like that. So I expect him to be at Baylor better than VJ Edgecombe, who went 3rd. I think he's a lottery pick, has the body of many NBA stars, so there's a chance that avenue presents itself for him to rise into the top 5 because he's reminiscent of some of the big boys who have been fantastic in the NBA. And I think he's just got a lot of stuff to him. And yet the main thing I keep being drawn to is he just makes positive things happen. I'm a fan of Tounde Yessoufou. So what do you guys think? Who's the one? If the Jazz picked 4, the big 3 are gone, who would you take? Let me know what you guys think. I think I'd be hard-pressed to pass on some of these guys. I think Jaden Quaintance, if he's healthy and the shot develops a little bit, he's the one that I think is the most game-changing. But he's maybe not the one that I feel is confident with the ball in his hands that's going to take the franchise to be the number 1 scorer. Like, that's a little bit different. And if that's the case, there could be a pitch for Tounde Yessoufou. There could be a world where Nate Ament turns into a Brandon Ingram, something like that. Maybe he's even better. So this draft's loaded. I think there's numerous all-stars in this draft. But let me know who you guys think is the best of the bunch that's not considered in the big 3. Thank you guys for making Locked On Jazz your first listen today. For your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there's no offseason. Doug, Matt, Hayes, all the crew keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.